We have a podcast. Better late than never. Let's do it. Welcome to Footnotes, a behind-the-scenes look at what we value and why it matters here at Foothill Church in Glendora, California. My name is Stephen Coppenrath. I'm one of the pastors on staff, and I am your host. This is actually our first one of these podcasts. We've talked about doing a separate podcast for a long time, and now it's happening. And, we'll see who listens, right? I bet our wives will at least listen.
Yeah.
Michelle and Katie, nice to have you as our only listeners.
Hi, Michelle.
Great to have you ladies with us. But for today's topic, we're going to sit down and talk with our lead pastor at Foothill Church. You may know him from his esteemed musical theater career at Capital Christian Center, and as the guy who preaches and sometimes even spits at you if you're in the front row at church, Pastor Chris Lewis. And obviously, spit preaching is pre-COVID.
That's right.
And I feel like you're not really a good preacher unless you occasionally let the saliva fly, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I think most good preachers throughout history probably spit on their congregants, so that's a good thing. But Chris and I go back a few years now. It's pretty cool to be doing ministry with someone for a long time. How long has it been now, Chris?
13. Well, with you and me, 13, right? Because I'm in 14, so you're 1 year behind me.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Awesome.
And it's been a joy to serve with friends in that way. And today we want to chat about the importance of the gathered church, which is ironic because right now we aren't able to meet inside the building together because of COVID-19 restrictions. But just the past few weekends, Chris, you announced we're going to be trying something new that a few other churches in our area have tried out and meet outside. So tell us about that.
Yeah, we just, Hebrews tells us that there needs to be the assembling of ourselves together, and we understand that, and we celebrate that, and we've preached that, and yet COVID-19 has sort of put a damper. Obviously, every church had to go online. So, but we recognize there is the ability to meet outside, and there's not the limitations, and you can sing, and all the kinds of things that have been forbidden under current regulations. And we just felt, man, we want to do everything we can to meet together. We want to give people an opportunity to see one another. Like, it's really important that we gather together. Like, see faces. I mean, like Paul talks about, we admonish one another, not just in our growth groups and things like that, but through singing songs to one another, hymns and spiritual songs he talks about. And I think this is one of those opportunities to gather together and to encourage one another. I don't know about you, I feel like one of the most tangible ways that we can encourage faith in other people and encourage the perseverance for one another is just simply gathering.
Yeah.
And so I want us to gather and do it in a safe way, like we've talked about. We want it to be legal. We want it to be safe. We want it to be practical. And I think we can accomplish all three of those by gathering on August 9th outside. We'll do one service, 9 a.m., and we will just kind of, we're kind of dipping our toe in the water. Let's see where this goes. Let's see how it works. But for the time being, we're just looking forward to actually seeing faces that we haven't now seen for 4 months. We'll preach, we'll sing. Families will sort of stay together in their units, and it'll be like a Sunday service. I believe we're even planning on taking the Lord's Supper together. So it will be an outdoor service. I mean, it'll be a service. It'll just be outdoors, and so that we can in good conscience both obey the regulations that the state has and the county has given us, and we can be obedient to Jesus as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that day, and I think there's
me too.
a lot of different attitudes and perspectives on gathering. Tell us, Chris, a little bit about what we're doing as a church that day to even kind of help quell some of the fears that people may have about being in person. You mentioned some of them already, but obviously we're going to be wearing masks on our face. There's social distancing in place, but what else specifically?
Yeah, let me say this too. I want to make it very clear. Some people if you feel uncomfortable, we get that. We totally get that. And this is not, we don't want to guilt anybody into coming. That's not the point of this. The point of this, I think, is to safely gather as God's people, and yet we'll still continue to offer the online services on Sunday at 9, 10, 11, 8 o'clock. But I think to gather safely, we'll do it over at Baseline. We'll be in kind of that playground area, sort of spilling out to the sides of the grassy part. There'll be face masks. We'll check people. We'll make sure they even do a self-check before they come. We'll be spaced out and that not spaced out like, in a bad way. Like we'll space ourselves. We'll socially distant from one another.
Some of us may be spaced out. Yeah.
And then families will stay together. We're going to ask moms and dads, like, if you bring your little ones, and we hope you will.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to corral them. There won't be a children's ministry per se that day, although there will be. We'll try to at least speak to the kids and it'll be 1 hour long. So we're not talking hours and hours of this sort of thing. And again, like I said, this is just our attempt to dip our toe in the water and go, how can we do this in a way that is safe, that's legal, that's practical, and yet really does accomplish what we feel like the Lord wants us to accomplish.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, kind of zooming out a little bit in terms of thinking about the gathered church. August 9th is going to be a great day. I really believe that seeing people will be awesome. But one of the big $10 words that theologians use to describe church is ecclesiology, which is really this small piece of the theological pie regarding how churches are structured, what makes a healthy church. So I'm just curious, Chris, for you, and I know you care a lot about these things, and we do as a staff and elders, but how has your ecclesiology been tested or maybe even shifted because of this global pandemic?
I don't know that it's shifted. Of course it's been tested, but I think, I go back to Richard Baxter, and I'm going to paraphrase him right now. He's the Puritan that talked about if the governor tells you to not meet because of a pandemic, you don't meet. If the governor tells you not to meet because he doesn't want you to preach the gospel, then you meet, right? So here we are. It's a pandemic. There is a public health issue, and people fall on that spectrum. I understand it all over the place, but we've just decided, hey, this is a time where again, legal, safe, practical, and we don't want to put anybody in harm's way. We don't want there to be any angst or anxiety where we're making people feel like they're sinning. We are in an extraordinary time where this has just never happened before, and we have to try to find a way through. So, of course, like every other church, we move to online. Is that preferred? No. Is that something we hope we get to continue to do? Truthfully, no. However, I'll just say this out loud. I think for the foreseeable future, we will be online.
Yeah.
Not because I think that's God's preferred way or anything, but because I think there's just a reality there that we've got to deal with until a vaccine comes along, and there's just no more public health reason for offering online services. I think we're in the position because I want to make sure, the elderly couple, the health compromised person feels like, man, I can still worship with Foothill Church and stay safe in doing so.
Yeah.
And so I think it requires, I don't think it's a shift in ecclesiology. I think that's an accommodation out of love, that we want to make sure that we're loving people and helping them through this time.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an opportunity for us as a church to show love and care for people. Yeah. And that's kind of one of those pieces in tandem that sometimes I think people forget about. It's just about transactionally being at church, going to church, and there's an opportunity to care for people around us. And this is, as you mentioned, this is kind of an unprecedented time. This meeting, gathering thing has been nuanced, even controversial. Do you remember the last time where something in the church has been kind of almost ripe for disunity in this way? I mean, it's kind of been a while, right?
Yeah. You said disunity.
Yeah,
right?
disunity.
Yeah. It's been that's the hard part, I think, right now is if there had been things that I thought would cause the church. I'm using Big C Church. I'm not using necessarily even talking about Foothill Church, but the Big C Church to fracture. I can think of a lot of other things besides pandemics and face masks that would have I would have put in that category.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of shocking,
surprising,
honestly, to see that this is the thing that has caused disunity within the larger body of Christ, and I think it's a shame.
And it's really caused a lot of even influential pastors to almost have to draw some lines. And as you know, Pastor John MacArthur from Grace Community just released a statement with some of his elders laying out some of the reasons their church will be meeting, despite Governor Newsom's restriction for churches to meet in the season. And John MacArthur has a great reputation in many ways as a faithful pastor and expositor of Scripture in Southern California for a long time. But what's your take on his statement?
I've had great appreciation for John MacArthur, for Grace Community. They have been a bulwark of biblical faithfulness for decades. So I honestly have nothing but respect for him, for them. I know some people, at times find him acerbic, and truthfully, for me personally, I've just found John MacArthur to be very helpful to me for years of my ministry. Having said that, I want to be careful I say that. I see why they are saying what they're saying. I think that's a choice that churches have to make. My concern is the tone with which it was given.
Sure.
And by the way, if you will, I think Stephen will tell you we have like links to this where we can point you to his article. Great response by Jonathan Lehman, Mark Dever of Nine Marks Ministry, also another ministry highly respected by us as a staff, certainly by me. And just look in a very loving, civil way, saying, "Hey, we love our brothers and the elders over at Grace Community, but we don't think that's the only place you can land and still be biblically faithful." And that's my only pushback. I don't want us to believe that we are sinning, and that's not me just excusing myself. I don't believe we're sinning, and I think the way it was phrased was that if you don't do this, then somehow you are outside, you are being disobedient, you are not being one of the faithful remnant of the church. And I think there's other ways to look at that. I believe we should be meeting, absolutely. And listen, there may come a moment for civil disobedience. I'm not saying we would never do that, but right now, this is sort of what's happening in California. So I don't want to speak to Nevada and some of the stuff that's happened there, but let's talk about California. California has been sort of, for lack of a better term, equal opportunity offenders, right? That is that they've sort of said, hey, bars and restaurants and churches and public venues and, shopping malls and concerts, all those things have to shut down, or you've got to do them in a safe way outdoors. And so if they had carved out churches, my legal background would tell me that's a time for a constitutional violation. They can't do that.
Right.
That hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So constitutionally, I don't feel offended by what they've done. Biblically, I wish it weren't the way it is, but I don't feel like we're at a place where Caesar is trying to crush us. I feel like there is a way for us to be biblically faithful while trying to be obedient to Caesar.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's the great interchange between Nine Marks and Jonathan Lehman, those guys, and John MacArthur, those responses, and even a good podcast that they did that sort of even dives into some of these issues that if that's something you're interested in, man, I just found them extraordinarily helpful to kind of see that back and forth and understand that at the end of the day, it's possible to disagree with the elders of Grace Community and still be biblically faithful.
Amen. Yeah, and we'll have all those resources in the show notes below the podcast. And I agree, Chris. I think there's really great things actually from seeing kind of almost a long form discussion written out, and where somebody makes a stance, there's a kind of a rebuttal almost, and it allows conversation to happen like this one. And so,
and it's not a conversation between liberal Christianity and conservative Christianity.
Absolutely. We're on the same team.
I mean, if I were to phrase it, I mean, here we are. We're little Foothill Church out here in Glendora, and I look at these. Mark Dever and John MacArthur. First of all, they do conferences together. They're friends. They are two. I guess we tend to make celebrities of pastors. These are two theological heavyweights, right, in today's sort of pastoral realm. Very well-known guys. And to see, it's just, I actually find it very helpful to see when guys of that stature, that we would go, hey man, we're on their team. We're all in the same tribe. To see them disagreeing about stuff like this in a civil way.
Yeah.
They're not yelling at each other. They're saying, like, here's why we've landed where we've landed. And I think more of us would do well to listen in on things like that and learn from it.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we have to start somewhere, and obviously we're really hoping to start strong with our August 9th event, Foothill Outdoors. Yeah. And so, hey, just want to remind you, if you and your family want to register for that, you can find all the info you need on foothill.church/outdoors. Chris, quick speed round questions to end this episode. Just a few questions just for you to just share what's going on in your life a little bit. So, number one, last few months, any new hobbies, projects that you guys have picked up in the last few months?
I've kind of been YouTubing how to fix everything around my house. So I guess that's sort of, but I've also, Tucker and I, my son, for those of you who don't know, we decided we were going to just take on this project to build a pergola in the backyard off of our house, and didn't really know what we were getting into. And that took us, I mean, we didn't realize we'd have to pour cement and build frames and all this stuff, but it was a great project. Turned out we love it, and now we just need to furnish it. But that was a really fun project to do. I've never done something like that.
So would you suggest YouTube.com as a good resource?
Yeah, that's good.
We'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well. YouTube.com is a new website that's out, and we want to just point you towards that as well. Chris, number two, what's a book that you've been reading lately that's been helpful?
So I decided I was going to take some of this break and just kind of dive into, trying to understand what's happening in our culture, certainly the racial tension. So I've been doing a lot of reading on that. And so, of course, I think we talked about it a couple months ago. I read Jamar Tisby's Color of Compromise, found that helpful. I read Brian Loritz wrote a great book called Insider Outsider, where he talks about his experience as a black evangelical, reform, kind of our tribe, but being in what he calls white evangelicalism, and just that tension that he feels and points of pressure. And then I've just started, it's a bigger book, but I'm really enjoying it. Book, I think it's by Isabel Wilkerson, I believe, who wrote the book, The Warmth of Other Suns. And again, it's really, I'm just trying to understand the black experience of America and listen in, and whether I agree with all their conclusions is not the issue. It's more just, I want to make sure I'm just not tone deaf and deciding, hey, I know what I know, I feel what I feel. I want to at least get myself and have those conversations. So those for me have been three, and then of course there's just some fun reading I've done, but those have been three books that I've enjoyed.
Yeah. I think reading different things is so important as kind of on our journey as learners. I mean, if we just continue to read the same things that we always read, then you kind of get what you get. So, question three: what is your favorite type of artificial sweetener?
Oh, does everybody know where this came from?
You can tell the story or not.
This is a ridiculous story. Michelle and me and Stephen and Katie were at a conference in Kansas City about 2 years or 3 years ago, Stephen?
Maybe 3 years ago.
And we were driving around late at night, and somehow they got on the topic of artificial sweeteners, Sweet and Low and Stevia. And I mean, they talked, Stephen, it felt like it was like 25 minutes, like it just was not going to ever let up. And I was finally like, come on, this has lasted way too long. Like,
that's awesome.
We have got to stop. So it was just artificial sweetener, I don't know. I don't use it. So, and I refuse, Stephen, to let that conversation go any longer.
Yeah, I mean, we were really getting into what was what, aspartame versus sucralose versus stevia, and we were just in our world, just talking. Yeah. Chris was driving, kind of like Dad, and eventually at one point he kind of yelled and threatened to turn the car around. And it's like, we cannot talk about this any longer. This has gone way too long, so... but Chris is a straight up no sweetener guy. But thanks so much for being a part of this, and hopefully this is a helpful thing to our church.
I sure hope so. Yeah, thanks, Stephen.
All right, well, we are out of time, but thanks for joining us for our podcast, Footnotes. Our goal is to release one of these each Monday, so be sure to go to foothill.church/footnotes for more information. So until next time, Foothill, peace be with you. You get a podcast. You get a podcast. Everyone gets a podcast.